Noam Chomsky, Rogue States, The Rule of Force in World Affairs. Immerse yourself in the hidden side of international politics as you explore Noam Chomsky's Rogue States, The Rule of Force in World Affairs. Uncovering the truth behind the United States' tactics of imposing its political and economic agenda, Chomsky exposes the questionable foreign interventions that have defied international laws. Pieces of this puzzle fall into place, from the factors that drive the U.S. to influence other countries, to the use of media manipulation in maintaining their stronghold on public perception. Delve into the corporation-led landscape and see how the pursuit of power trumps any notion of freedom, democracy, and human rights.
The United States as a rogue state. The book exposes the United States' consistent violation of the 1945 UN Charter by relying on force to maintain its position of power. The U.S. has forcefully intervened in several nations and sponsored state violence to suppress threats to its political and economic supremacy. The book uses Guatemala's example to illustrate how the U.S. has installed and supported governments that align with its interests, regardless of their atrocities. The book concludes that the U.S., by its own definition, is the most hostile rogue state globally due to its countless acts of international aggression. Economic interests and U.S. interventions. The United States' interventions abroad are not driven by moral superiority but economic interests. Their adherence to the Washington Consensus prioritizes the opening of global markets and implementation of neoliberal reforms, benefiting large U.S. corporations. Developing nations bear the burden while the richest gain. The U.S. has supported brutal regimes that follow their economic demands and punish those who oppose it, like Cuba. U.S. foreign policy is largely driven by economic objectives. The empty rhetoric of U.S. foreign policy. U.S. foreign policy claims to prioritize democracy, freedom, and human rights, but a closer look reveals that these values are often just empty rhetoric to justify actions taken in the interest of U.S. self-preservation. The so-called drug wars in Latin America are an example of this, as U.S. intervention has done little to actually combat drug trafficking while ignoring or even supporting violent regimes. U.S. policy continues to prioritize self-preservation, with moral principles serving as a mere facade to maintain legitimacy. The role of media in shaping public opinion. The media's portrayal of domestic and foreign policies affects how the public perceives them. The U.S. government relies heavily on positive framing and selective reporting to maintain public support. The media's control by a small number of megacorporations enables the government to manipulate news reporting to suit their own interests. This symbiotic relationship advances American power domestically and promotes free market capitalism worldwide. Examples of favorable and unfavorable coverage of U.S.-led attacks illustrate how the media can shape public opinion. The media's objectivity and impartiality are questionable due to corporate control, compromising its role as an objective commentator. The United States and international law. International law is designed to maintain peace and security globally. However, the United States has frequently ignored it, citing foreign policy goals as an excuse. The U.S. supported illegal invasion of East Timor and its bombing of Kosovo, despite being considered illegal by the United Nations, are only a few examples. Despite this, the U.S. cites international law when it suits them, using it to impose harsh sanctions on countries like Cuba and Iran. The U.S.'s selective application of international law illustrates its immense power and its impact on other countries. The cost of U.S. power. The pursuit of U.S. interests has resulted in a systematic violation of human rights, burdened developing countries with odious debt, and imposed an unjust global financial order that benefits the few at the cost of the many. Successive U.S. governments have engaged in a ruthless pursuit of power and financial gain at the expense of countless innocent lives. Through direct military interventions and support for brutal regimes, basic human rights have been disregarded, leaving many as losers and only a few as benefactors. Developing countries in desperate need of support are often ignored by the U.S., while those burdened with odious debt from Washington are forced to develop in a way that ultimately serves U.S. interests. The universal disregard for human rights by the very country that can make them universal has resulted in a tragic loss of countless lives and the destruction of hope for universal well-being. Furthermore, the global capitalist financial system promoted by the US has imposed an uneven distribution of wealth and benefits, particularly on workers and the poor. Countries with strong labor laws and unions are penalized financially by US-controlled institutions like the IMF, while US workers have suffered a loss of union power and declining wages since the 1970s. In conclusion, the pursuit of US power has resulted in a systematic violation of human rights, an unjust global financial order, and benefits for the few at the cost of the majority of the world. The rise of market forces. The post-Cold War era has witnessed a surge in neoliberal globalization, which has empowered markets and corporations to necessitate political and economic arrangements for the world. The unregulated nature of this economic system has resulted in markets dominating the global majority, compromising core values such as democracy, human rights, and sovereignty. In this context, markets and corporations have become autonomous entities whose main objective is financial growth and capital gain. Although the state's role has minimized, it is still vital in creating and securing industry and intervening in case of management failures. Therefore, a symbiotic relation exists between market forces and the US government, resulting in the latter's international policy being a byproduct of this alliance. Eventually, market forces have become the governing power of the current world order.
In light of Chomsky's in-depth examination, it is clear that the United States has been operating like a rogue state, bending or disregarding international laws to maintain political and economic dominance. Economic motivations lurk behind the facade of moral superiority, revealing an unjust hierarchy that benefits the few at the expense of the majority. With a media that manipulates public opinion and market forces that drive the global order, we must question the structures and policies that define the international landscape. By embracing the truth, we gain the power to challenge these disparities and push forward in hopes of a better world.